Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu wants the access threshold for the social relief of distress grant to be increased. It will be increased from the 350 rand currently being received to over 600 rand. This will align it to the national poverty line, but the Institute for Economic Justice says this is not the problem. It's concerned with the non-delivery of grants. It says between April and June, over 27 million fewer payments were made than were supposed to. Let's discuss this with Zimbali Mncube from the Institute. He joins us now virtually. Zimbali, thank you very much for your time. Of course, this would be a positive for those who are not receiving any salaries, etc., and who are, saying that the 350 rand is not enough. But looking at some of the glitches that we've seen, I suppose you're thinking that there were some other things that the Social Development Department needed to look at before just making this decision.
Thank you for having me on your show. Yeah, we think that the increase in the minister's threshold is a step in the right direction. However, it's simply not enough when you consider that about 18.3 million people live below the food poverty line. And so some of our comments that we'll be making is that it should be increased to the upper bound poverty line of 1,335. But there are other key issues that need to be resolved. And I would like to point out one particular issue, which is the source of this crisis, really. And that is that the National Treasury has imposed a budget cap of 44 billion, which only allows the DST to pay about 10.5 million beneficiaries for this grant. And that is simply not enough. And this is why we find that DST is creating complex application processes that have questions which confuse applicants, and they end up self-excluding themselves, as the DSD has said. And this is why we see the introduction of databases that are outdated, which also unfairly exclude a high number of applicants. We see that in the latest iteration of the grant, only about 3 million people were paid, compared to about 10.5 million back in February. And so this is concerning for us.
Now, looking at the fact that, this social relief of distress grant was not paid into people's account back in April and in May, do you think this also shows that the government, wouldn't it basically be exacerbated, whatever problem they went through, wouldn't it be exacerbated if now they have to pay even more money to the individuals?
Not really. People need to survive. As you can see, that the state of the economy is not, that is the cost of living rather is quite high, and inflation is at an all-time high. And to expect people to survive on 350 and then impose measures that seek to investigate whether people have an income of about 600 in their account is not enough for us for people to realize their human rights and to have human dignity. And so DSD and the government in general needs to do more.
No, I'm talking about their challenges, not necessarily that it would be a problem to, give people more money to assist them. I'm talking about the fact that DSD did have challenges already in April and May, having to pay 350 rand. Now, having to pay more money to the individuals, won't their challenges be exacerbated unless they fix those challenges first before implementing this? Because then they'll stress more people. I mean, 10.5 million in February, suddenly 3 million now, according to your statistics, means that there's about 7 million people that they've stressed out who expected to get money and they didn't.
Yeah, I think the key issue here, Masego, is that means testing and the idea of trying to scrutinize whether people are earning or whether there's income is the source of the DSD's problems. And they do not have the administrative capacity to, investigate some of those issues and to look at people's bank accounts. And this is why there was a delay in the payments, because they had to finalize their contract with private banks. And so If the means test threshold is increased, and the means testing is not a barrier, rather, to how people are assessed, then that problem will be addressed.
How would you then suggest that they make sure that a person, for instance, even in their own department, we found out that there were people who were receiving the 350 Rand grant, receiving salaries and having jobs. They had applied, they went through, etc. So obviously they're trying to implement this to be able to vet and make sure that the money doesn't go to the wrong people. So what would you suggest they do then to make sure that this doesn't happen?
Yeah, I think in the short term, the solution really is to ensure that we implement, we pay people that deserve the grant. And of course, there will be those outliers and people that try to trick the system. But the best way really to filter people out of the system is self-selection, right? Because we do not have the administrative capacity as government, rather, government doesn't have the administrative capacity to assess whether people are earning income or whether they have income in their bank accounts. This is something that would have to be developed over a long term. And currently, people need the money on an urgent basis.
Yeah, definitely. And just lastly, Zimbali, tell me about the irrational budget cap, obviously set by National Treasury. How is this going to hamper the DSD once they do increase this grant?
Well, the need of the grant is quite clear. As I've said before, in February and March, about 15 million people applied, right? Which means that the budget that is currently available is not enough to cover the people that need this grant. And so one of our proposals and one of the comments that we've been making is that the allocations to this grant should be increased in the short term until March 2023. But that in the long term, we need to have a dialogue that is led by the president and a dialogue that includes civil society and other stakeholders, which starts to chart a way and pathways towards a universal basic income grant. And this is really a permanent solution to some of these issues that we are speaking about, and comprehensive social protection.
All right, Zimbali Mncube, thank you very much for your time here on All Angles.